Mayhem Campaign Diary number 5. We are into the Arcane engines. Due to some streaming by the group, this session was particularly short. They only made it into 2 additional rooms, although they technically finished what they came down here to do in that time. While they were trying to figure out how they wanted to proceed, Tristan decided to go back upstairs and negotiate with the Hobgoblin captain again. He wanted one Hobgoblin to come down with them to kind of shadow the group and to be there to run upstairs and get them back up if they got in over their heads. And there was a long discussion over how much basically that this should cost them. Eventually, Tristan was able to negotiate for this service of the bugbear to follow them to be only 20 gold. And if they did indeed call in backup, the price afterwards would be negotiated. After this, there were 5 other doors for them to go through, and I had kind of tried to steer them in going. They had gone through a door that would have been considered 1 o'clock, and I had tried to steer them going through 12, and then I wanted them to keep going around counterclockwise. Instead, they chose to go clockwise, and they went into a door that we'll call 3 o'clock. Which happened to be the route to the woman that they were looking for, or actually that they didn't know that they were looking for. This led them into a room with a small forest, basically growing from the ceiling downwards. And after the trees, they were blackened and almost dying. Tristan touched one of the trees to see if he felt any life and if he could use his heart sense on them. He couldn't. But it was at that moment that Tristan and Suri heard a growling noise coming from the trees. It was then that they noticed that there was a barrow hound hiding amongst its branches. And this is a very large animal, and it's 7 feet tall, 12 feet long, I believe. Or that might be reversed. Would that be 12 feet long, 7 feet tall? Maybe. That actually sounds better. Hiding in the branches, and it's like 300 pounds. I don't actually know how this thing was supposed to hide in the branches. I assume it's just a Fey thing, because this thing comes from the Feywild. Tristan was able to make an Arcana check to identify what the creature was, so he knew that he needed to speak Sylvan in order to communicate with it. If I were a smarter DM, what I would have done was I probably would have said that one of the magical effects that went awry in this laboratory increased the barrow hound's intelligence, or just gave it the ability to speak. Because as is, a barrow hound can understand Sylvan, but it can't speak it. So really communicating with them was a lot harder than I intended, and well, they communicated with this creature a lot more than I thought they would. So Tristan had to basically ask it yes or no answers, because it could easily communicate the answer to those. Don't know what the hell that was. Where they basically learned that it ended up through here through a portal, but the portal had been closed. Tristan tried to ask how long it had been here, but it didn't really have a way to communicate that. I don't know if they gathered that it was because, it had only been in this room and there was no day or night cycle, so there was no way for it to know. But that's basically what it was. And after they had befriended it, and Suri had been freaking out in the background over how adorable she thought it was, it even went so far as to make 4 markings in the dirt to kind of warn them that there were at least 4 creatures in the next room. Then it went back into the trees, and I think Tristan tried to ask it to give them a hand fighting what was in the next room, at which point I just said that it just turned around and kept going further into the trees, basically saying, no, that's all I'm helping you. Besides, it wouldn't have even fit down the next hallway. There was a brief moment where Suri and Tristan were trying to sneak ahead, but then they realized they were carrying torches, so they left their torches behind and then kind of felt their way along the wall, because they knew that this next doorway that there had light coming out from underneath it, so they could see the door, and then they knew they'd be able to see inside. Creaking or slowly creeping up to that door and getting it slightly open, they could see only a little bit in there. They were blasted by the hum of machinery, and they could hear a woman inside seeming to be very frustrated with whatever she was doing. Opening the door further, they were spotted by an undead hobgoblin zombie, and then they chose it when it looked up at them and growled in their direction. That's when they chose to close the door and run back to the group. But they had alerted Alicia, who was in that room, to their presence, so she followed after them. Further down the hallway, back into the room with the dead trees, Alicia followed after them and then began trying to communicate with them. She asked them who they were, she got their names, and was kind of trying to figure out why they were there. And then they realized who she was, that she had been Pavos's lover, and that she hadn't gone to go get reinforcements like he believed, and instead she had come down here to try and find this artifact. And she admitted as much, she didn't care. When negotiations finally broke down, she moved she had 3 undead hobgoblins. She moved 2 of them in front of her. This part of the hallway was 10 feet wide, and the one heading back to the room that she had been in was only 5 feet wide. She only brought 2 of them with her to block that spot off, and then 1 remained back there. She then attempted to cast, I think it was Enemies Abound or something, on the party fighter, Garion, and he unfortunately rolled like an 18 on his saving throw, which really sucked, because it would have been very interesting had he had failed that and he had to attack the party. He's like a 21 AC. But they got lucky, and so there was that. And then I allowed Tristan to play his lyre. I'll go with Lyre of Building, and he summoned a construct, and then everyone rolled for initiative. The first round of combat was pretty straightforward. It got real interesting when Alicia tried Enemies Abound again, this time on Suri, and succeeded. So when it got to Suri's turn, I explained to her how as she was surrounded by enemies. And Suri at first wanted to run, because she reasoned that if she's surrounded by enemies, well, why would she stay there and fight? But as a GM, while that did make sense, I also said, well, that would really just make the spell kind of useless then, because it would just be the fear spell, really, if it would just make you run away. But the point is to make you attack your enemies. And then we had to randomly determine who she would attack, so I did determine that, and it ended up being Gideon, who was beside her. And I said, while she could move away afterwards, she did need to attack him now. So she rolled to attack, hit him, rolled max damage on her rapier, and then I also determined that she would have sneak attack. Not necessarily because she had allies next to him, but because, well, there was really no way of him seeing this coming, so I was like, yeah, that should be a sneak attack moment, which she rolled maximum damage on. Again, I think her total was, 18 damage. She dropped him immediately. Later on, we determined that the only way that could have been any worse was if she had critted on him, because she would have, with the full amount of damage that she would have dealt, it would have been enough to kill him outright from massive damage, which would have been horrible, and I would have felt bad. A little bit. Afterwards, she moved away. No one took an opportunity to attack on her, and then she moved into the brush of the trees and used her bonus action to hide. As at this point, Garion decided that he needed to avenge his friends and also get back at the woman, because he knew that she had tried to cast magic on him and it had failed, and probably reasonably assumed that he would have actually attacked his friends had he not succeeded. So he moved in and pretty much immediately killed, I believe Tristan's construct killed one of these undead, and then he moved in to kill the other one. Critted on it, enough damage outright to kill it, but with the new weapon that he has, the Disruptor, not the Disruptor, it's just called Disruptor. Let's see, when I sent him a little image of what it could do, I cut off the bottom part because he had no way of knowing entirely what it could do, and I didn't actually think that he would crit and kill a creature this soon with it. But because he did, when he crits, he chops off a part of the enemy, and when he kills them, and then you roll a d6 and it grows into this creature from I think it's called the Court of All Flesh. Yes, the Court of All Flesh. He rolled a 3 and got the Queen of Bones, who actually didn't get to do anything during this combat. Looking back on this, I should have had way more undead with her, I guess. 3, these undead were actually had abilities similar to Strahd zombies. Well, no, not Strahd zombies. I don't remember what undead it is, but if they take damage, they don't have a lot of hit points or a lot of health, but if they take damage, that would kill them. They get to make a save, and it's like 5 plus the damage that they take, and if they succeed, they instead are left with only 1 hit point. Problem is that it was Trace and the summoned construct that was dealing this damage to them, so it was all very high, and they couldn't make the saves to maintain their form. So they were just being killed in 1 or 2 hits. It's an important learning lesson for the future, I would say. Alicia had ran off back down the hallway that she had came, and Azrael chased after her. He managed to hit her with a firebolt, which broke her concentration, so that way she didn't have Suri charmed anymore. I would have loved to have seen another round of Suri going after someone, but I didn't get that. Eventually, Alicia created a cloud of daggers, or is it a cloud of blades? I don't know, whatever, in the hallway. It's only 5 feet wide, so she's able to close it off perfectly. And the party was trying to cram their way through this hallway, but there was just so many of them. They had to keep counting as difficult terrain. They couldn't really get through. And then I believe it was Tristan or Mary that was realizing that they were slowing each other down by all trying to move forward as fast as they could. Garion actually chose to hold back, and he sent his Queen of Bones forward. She actually had a dispel magic ability, so she was able to get rid of those daggers. And then they could easily send everyone through after that. And Sue realized that as a halfling, and she had Nimble, which allowed her to just pass through everyone without them counting as difficult terrain. And she was able to dash. She got through the hallway entirely and was able to finish off the final zombie hobgoblin. And I believe it was the earth elemental that Garion had summoned that went next and made it to the end of the hallway, and he rolled 2 hits on Alicia. Both hit, and both did a huge amount of damage, enough to not outright kill her, but to bring her down to 0. I basically described as how she had this look of shock on her face as he just came barreling forward and pretty much grabbed her head and just it was pretty entertaining. They all seemed to get a kick out of that. Briefly after that, they were arguing over how to take her back upstairs. Even though I asked if this discussion was happening in character, and I was told yes, and I was very trying to visibly roll dice in front of them while they were discussing, so they would think I was doing something. What they didn't realize was that I was rolling death saving throws. And, well, they didn't try to stabilize or heal Alicia in time, so she did eventually bleed out from the wounds that she had suffered. Before leaving, Suri noticed there was something within this final room. I guess I should actually say what was in here. This is where a large arcane gate was. It was in between 2 trees, and there was a multitude of piping and just machinery that had everything connected. To anyone with knowledge of D&D, this is basically a planar portal you would use to travel between worlds. They don't know much about this one, but this one was deactivated by the time they actually had a chance to look at everything. And Suri noticed that in one of the trees she could see this, it was like a scroll tube with brass casings on the ends and a little bit on the center. It looked to be filled with black smoke. She couldn't reach it herself, so she had Tristan get it for her because he could fly. They don't know what this is yet. No one could identify it, and they also chose not to open it yet. So it will be fun to reveal what that is. Since none of them watch these, I can reveal these to you. This is one of several codexes, or codices, however you say it. Each of these written in a time before anything, basically. Before the idea is that magic and existence itself was fluid, and by writing things down, we set in stone what they were. And this is one of the codexes, the original writings of basically that formed reality. I think the one I chose for this was the Umbral Codex. So these are actually very powerful magic items and way above their level, but it takes a month to be able to attune to one of these things. And it felt like an adequate, powerful item that would be powering a portal like this. So we'll see what happens, and plus, when else do I get to use one of these? And that was all that really happened during that session. Next game, they'll be heading back upstairs to let the hobgoblins know that they don't need their services anymore and that they can leave, so they'll have to pay them the rest of that money. Afterwards, they'll probably be heading to Azrael's parents to get their pay, and after that, I'm thinking of allowing a kind of an extended downtime period, maybe a week or 2 or something, where they get to relax or just do something for themselves. For instance, I do believe Garion wants to do something involving blacksmithing. I'll have to just contact the players individually, see what they would do during that time. I also need to prep whatever next quest they would go on. I think what I'll probably do is try and probe each of them to kind of get a feel for what they might be looking for next. This whole thing was brought on by Azrael. He said that he was looking for powerful magic or something that he could use to kind of help make a name for himself and his family, and that's what he got here. So we'll see what else I can squeeze out of my players to see what might interest them next. Well, it is 2 in the morning now, and I've got a lot to do tomorrow, so may all your 20s be natural, and you have a good day.